when Disney bought Fox, they bought half of Fox, so they left like Rupert Murdoch's, you know,
Oh right, okay.
Fox News alone, but they took all of the entertainment assets. So so I was like, all right, well, what's gonna happen with that? Because they took over, you know, everything. I mean, they have The Simpsons, they have you know, anything that was on Fox, and with that came Alien. I'm like, Mickey Mouse and facehuggers. I'm like, I don't see how.
Yeah, that sounds weird. Also, wait, so they have The Simpsons now as well?
Yes.
What happens to Universal then? Because they had like the whole, you know, like in the theme parks, they had like the whole Simpsons area.
No, and my kids started watching Simpsons, and we have passes that are once, you know, Universal's active again, they're open, and we want to go and do it because they have the Universal ride there,
Yeah.
and they have the whole, you know, you're right, they have the whole Simpsons area. I don't know what's gonna happen. Are they might pull that into California Adventure or something, and then that leaves Universal with a ton of open space. I don't know.
Yeah, they probably have like all kinds of complex contracts, like just like
Yeah,
letting them do it. Maybe one day
probably like
Disney will
20.
buy Universal and then just like take over.
Dude,
I
I hope not.
wouldn't put it past them.
Yeah.
I didn't know about Disney either. Although I've just bought the Alien Series 7 book collection set. I did not know that existed. I've got a ton of comics and things like that, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
how did I not know books exist? I mean, I'm not a big reader, but this is the sort of thing I'd read.
Yeah,
I'm ordering one
I
too.
tell you, read River of Pain. It's
Aha.
like it's the
Go
fall.
ahead.
Yeah.
It's the fall of the colony on LV-426. So it's
nice.
what happened. It's what happened to Hadley's Hope. It's insane.
Talking about sci-fi films and series, I just completed watching The Expanse. It's still
I started
good.
watching that.
It's still good. Oh my
It's-
god.
I want to watch more, and they ran out. I was like, I could start again. So I started
Oh
again.
man.
Yeah, I did like one episode like 4 nights ago or something. It was like 1 in the morning, and I was like started rendering. I'm like, I can't even go to sleep. What am I gonna do? Oh, The Expanse, and it was good.
Yeah.
I like this.
Yeah,
I
really
like
Yeah.
hard sci-fi. I think it's a good take on the genre.
I mean, the show goes more deep into space, and as much as it goes, everything makes sense for some reason. Like, you know, it's not just random words. It's just it kind of makes sense when you listen to them. It's really wonderful.
So that's really cool.
Yeah, the next season is gonna come out in this November, and I'm excited already.
Yeah, there's like 5 seasons, and I think that'll be the 6th, right?
Yeah, that'll be the 6th and final one, so it should be even more better.
Wow.
I let all of season 5 come out before I watched it because I can't wait a week. Watched them, I think 3 at a time, and that didn't last long, obviously.
Yeah, I was telling my wife about
Wow.
it, so hopefully we can watch it together.
That's
I've been
really
having to like distract myself. So like the alien stuff, I've totally distracted myself. Like that's like the only thing I've done when I take breaks has been like reading the books. And now I'm like, now that I've finished most of the books, I'm like, like read The Expanse. I'll watch TV again.
yeah. In the meantime, I'll just read Harry Potter, the 3rd book, because it's better. Because I'm kind of forgetting what's happening in that one.
You need to
love
know
it.
it off by
It's been a
heart.
long time.
Yeah.
No, it's not about by heart. It's just like the story is still good in the 3rd.
Yeah.
Or else just suggest me some other books, you know, which basically might improve my sci-fi skills.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm getting dreams. Oh my god, I'm in space. I'm in zero gravity. What can I do? I just, it's weird.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You just got
Yeah, wait till
Elite Dangerous as well, the video game.
Yeah, it's 25% done downloading. So
Nice.
it kind of looks like Expanse because in the first 3 seasons, the graphics are not too extreme. It's just, you know, that, okay, it's low budget series, but once Amazon took over, I mean, you know, bought the show, it became way better. And the story is like too deep.
Wow.
You should watch it, guys.
Yeah,
honestly.
it's been recommended.
What did it start on? If it wasn't Amazon.
No, I think it was on, I don't know. I everything is on Amazon now, but
Sci-fi? something?
Yeah, SY,
Yeah.
FY.
Oh, the Sci-Fi Channel. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
I don't know the channel, by the way. Hearing it for the first time.
I'm being pulled toward entertainment again for some reason. I'm like, my whole career has been just, real stuff. So I've
Yeah.
worked on real stuff that actually is that goes to space and flies and medical stuff. And
Yeah.
now I'm just like, man, I just want to like make stories.
Yeah, the one thing I really liked about The Expanse is, you don't have too much gribble to make it sci-fi, okay? It's
Oh,
just
good.
a lot of, I mean, the designs are good, the ships are good, the names are, I think by the end of the series, you'll know the world. The world building is too good, like, it's amazing. You learn a lot, honestly. I was
I heard
mostly
one
watching for
thing.
inspiration.
Earth is like the center of everything, and Mars is like military. And then there's like the scattered what do they
Yeah,
call them? The
the Belters,
The
yeah.
Belters.
Belters, yeah,
Yeah,
the
the
Belters.
Belters, yeah.
Which is kind of like what the name kind of like reminds me of the Reavers from Firefly, but they're
Ah,
totally different.
Oh, that was another
That was
cancelled
cool.
thing, wasn't it? I think.
I think
Yeah.
even this is like based on a novel. I didn't know that. After watching the 5th season, I was just googling it, The Expanse novel. I was like, what? There was a novel? I should read that novel. But yeah, it's really amazing. Story is too good. I just can't
I love
stop talking about it. Stop me, please.
Alien.
Yeah.
Fine.
Alien.
Yeah,
Let's come back.
You brought up there that the ships are quite realistic, and obviously that plays into the hard sci-fi genre. That they're not trying to be too futuristic. It's all very industrial.
Yeah.
Probably the Mars ships on there are probably the most clean and aesthetic ones, but ultimately
Yeah.
they're just war machines. But I think Alien was quite like that as well. The original one.
Yeah,
Oh
it's
my God,
very
Obviously
gritty.
they didn't show too much of it, but it was more.
Grip. I mean, it's more
I
pipes.
don't want to
That's
say
all.
realistic, but considering the technology available in 1970,
I don't know. I just
when it was
felt
filmed.
Yeah.
the color grading is too good that it makes it look realistic for me. I just
Yeah.
thought I thought it was all practical sets than 3D, you know?
I think there are like the certain steps that different projects take, which kind of like define like the next phase for that genre, I suppose. And I think Alien was like the big step, because before that, I don't really have any examples, but I don't think it looked like that at all.
Yeah.
What was it 79? Is that Alien?
Yeah, that came out in '79.
Yeah.
Yeah, 79.
I think that's the first time it was kind of very. Yes, kind of realistic, but I think rugged in the way that you could have kind of messy, industrial, productive sci-fi. Like if you take someone's messy bedroom, turn it industrial, and then just make that everything. It's like, okay, well, because then there's like everything is like a storytelling clue.
Yep.
Yeah.
Probably that's not what like science fiction. Sorry, that's not what science reality is going to be like in the future. But I think it's just a very different take, because it's like, oh, hold on, this is more immersive now, because we got like helmets and papers and like weird things kind of laying around and all that. And yeah, interesting.
Basically, not like we have like clean rooms in space, but the reality is it'll just be trashed because humans, we just trash things.
And dust
So, like,
everywhere.
dust everywhere.
Human
everything,
hair, like human skin particles after all that time.
In the first episode of The Expanse, seeing a rat on the ship or a mouse or a
Yeah.
rat, something, I was like, oh, this is real. This is gritty. This is good.
Oh, one thing about the Expanse series, there is this character called Joe Miller. He's like a detective who wears hat all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, his first film was in my language, which is Telugu.
Whoa.
It was one of the huge step in
Nice.
1987.
Whoa.
Like there was this Indian lady who fell in love with a foreign person. It is such a huge step. Like it's a huge thing basically, and it was in my language. I was always thinking, who is when they said like it's Tom Jane, I was like, what? Did I hear this name somewhere? Like, and I asked my mom, like, is there this move? Like, did you know this name? She's like, yeah, this guy was the one who acted in so and so film long time ago. I was like,
Whoa.
yeah, his first film. Like, it's not like it's basically his debut.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Very.
I was just blown away, and then after watching the series, it saw like the lead names, Avasarala. I think Christian Avasarala. She's the head of UN Council in that film, and this surname is also my language. I'm starting to find more clues. I don't know. It's just
Wow.
more connecting. It just felt more. I felt more into it.
Speaking about like
You should always-
South Indian stuff, by the way, I was just gonna say I watched you know, the cinema reaction to Endgame, that video.
Yeah.
I watched that earlier as well,
Yeah.
the South Indian one where it's just screaming
It's-
the whole way through.
Well,
We enjoy. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
I was like, whoa.
The next day I was not able to talk. It was just too sore, you know. I
Yeah.
was not able to talk. I was just shouting all the time. I mean, than the film, I was just enjoying with my friends. It's more fun. I don't know.
I have yet to watch that. I haven't seen it yet.
Oh my
don't
god,
know.
it's mad. Like
They
every
screened it in a
little
college.
thing that happens, it's just like everyone in the cinema just screams the whole
Yeah, it
time.
just screams. I said one, especially in the Infinity War when Thor comes from through the Bifrost, right?
Oh,
Like the
right.
savior, and that's when everyone went wild and mad, including me. It was amazing. When was it? 2017? I don't know. It was long time
Yeah.
ago.
Hmm.
It was a while ago. I saw Infinity
wow.
War. I liked it. It's super huge on Marvel stuff. It's just like it's
It is.
it's cool, but yeah.
I mean, it was like the end, right? Like 21
Yeah.
movies leading to this moment, and they have
Yep.
to justify everyone's position. So because they built the world around them,
That's right.
and I think they did justify it, like everyone's ending. But it was cool.
I
Endgame
haven't seen
was
all
one
21.
big mess because I completely forgot what happened in the beginning when it came to the end. So I had to rewatch it. It was too big
Yeah.
for him. Yeah, I
Crazy.
mean
We've
the
been
best
going
thing.
through with it with our children with the Marvel series, and actually watching them in the chronological order
Right.
of the
Yeah.
films rather than the release date order. The two eldest
man.
ones have watched it, but all the three youngest ones are just so excited by it all.
I was in 6th grade when the first Iron Man came. It was huge. I was like huge fan of Robert Downey Jr. right after that. 6th grade, like goddamn, I actually grew up with Marvel.
I drove past them filming. They were shooting, and Robert Downey Jr. was up on the Randy's donut.
Oh, right. Oh, that one.
Yeah.
Wow.
I actually saw them filming that shot. Like I drove. I was scouting out a location going up through L.A. north to we were going up to KTLA in Hollywood, and we actually ended up filming in their newsroom. But I was on the I think it was on the way back down to El Segundo at the time, and I had passed by, and they were like, you know, you saw like I saw Iron Man on Randy's donut. I was like, what is that? I'm like, there's like there's like this metal suit on. That's Iron. They're shooting Iron Man, and we my friend was in the van too, and we're like, oh, that's cool. So we actually saw it.
Oh, nice.
They
It's
were like
amazing.
I
in
love.
between takes, he was just like chilling out up there, like all like tethered in.
I love
I don't
that
even know if
bit.
it was Robert Downey, but yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. That's
Yeah.
this bit where he's talking to Nick Fury in the shop. And that's where one of my favorite lines in the series comes from, which is, "I don't want to join your super secret boy band."
Did you
Yeah.
start watching everything again, Curtis, recently?
I didn't watch everything again. I watched Spider-Man: Far From Home because I hadn't seen that one, and then I watched clips from Endgame again, just trying to refresh. Yeah, I liked Far
Yeah.
From Home. It was kind of a nice mix of comedy and seriousness, I guess. But yeah, I thought
Jake
it was okay.
Gyllenhaal was great.
Yeah, I thought some of the acting was a bit stale to start with, and I know he's a good actor because I've seen him in other
Yeah.
stuff, and I was like, okay, well, this
That's
has to
what
be
I had.
intentional. And then what you find out later makes more sense. So I
Yeah.
was like, okay, yeah, But apparently he was also very ill during some of the intro scenes. I think I remember him saying like he was like throwing up. So I was like, okay, well, I'll give him a pass on the acting for that one.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
But yeah, he's good.
I think you can actually see the amount of visual effects happening in 2011 and now
Hmm.
through the Marvel films. They stepped the
Yeah.
game too high. Like the bar is too high.
It was so expensive. It really
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I see like a lot of people trying to go back to like practical because it's just getting so outrageous. That's not even that it's outrageous. It's just that I hear stories that the visual effects industry kind of cornered themselves into a fixed bid model instead of a cost plus model. And once you do that, like he changes and changes and changes just eat into your bottom line. So you can't. It's like your margins at that point just become so razor thin, and people burn
Yeah.
out.
Mm.
It's just a nightmare scenario. So I don't know the fix to that because it's gotten so crazy.
One more thing is like in the future, it's like if you make a practical set, then that's going to be a huge thing because everything is becoming digital now, right?
I know it's like you got to find like skilled tradespeople who know how to build sets again. Like, but with
Very true.
Unreal
Oh,
coming, it's
yeah, I was going to say with Unreal and their virtual studio that you can have up, where you've got all the CG in the background, and then you've got some sort of foreground constructed. There was so I like my space stuff and I love my zombie stuff. Don't know why, just do. And I really like the game Dying Light. It's kind of a parkour type
Yes, I
game.
like that one.
Dying Light 2, they've just sort of announced it's coming this December. Pre-order now. I'm like, nope. I will wait until the reviews.
yeah.
But yeah, so they're doing this trailer, and I wonder if they're actually using Unreal's I don't know what they call it, sort of where they got this CGI in the background, because they're on this set that's all properly made up to fit in with the sort of the genre. They're on top of a building, or what looks like on top of a building over the cityscape, and it's really well done. And I'm like, this must be this new Unreal tech being used, because this doesn't look like a green screen. It's the sort of thing that would have been traditionally done with that. So I
It
can
looks
see
like
that coming.
I know one person who was on set on he was on The Mandalorian on an episode, and I'd love to be able to get on set to see that thing because that would just be so outrageous to see how it's all rigged up and built out. It's that man that technology just looks so amazing. And like the fact that you can capture all those reflections, that background, the reflections, everything into your environment. There's so much less, there'd be so much less cleanup and compositing you'd have to do that. You could actually save a lot of money right on the front end, and the director can actually see what the shots are going to look like without some like
Yeah.
magic rig like they used in Avatar. Like you actually see you're actually kind of in the environment. That's
Yeah.
wild.
I'm super excited for the upcoming films. There are too many in the line, which I'm excited for.
Yeah, there's quite a bit coming, and I think after the
Yeah.
pandemic, the floodgates are going to open up because Hollywood had to hold back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very busy at the moment with
Yeah.
productions because I think they're all just trying to catch up.
They are, and I think the visual effects houses are going to light up because I mean there's they're a little bit they're further down the pipeline. So once all the production and the principal photography happens for all these new shows, there's going to be I can just see this flood of work coming. So it's going to be good for people like us.
I've seen some amazing sets in my little excursions with my dad to work, and like I don't know how they make them sometimes because you're just there having a look, and it's all fiberglass, and like it doesn't look like fiberglass. But you're walking around it, and like sometimes when you're lucky enough, if they do like full rooms, you're just standing there like, whoa, that's just immersive. I think for King Arthur, I don't know what kind of scene it was, but there was just some kind of like castle, like throne roomy thing, and I was like, oh, that's cool.
Wow.
But then you walk behind it, it's all just scaffolding and fiberglass, like unpainted.
Yeah.
But they can't really recycle it, so I think they just dump a lot of it or throw a lot of it away. But I think that there have been special companies set up to try and recycle the stuff now, because I think back in the day there was just a lot that was thrown away. But yeah, really, really cool.
Yeah, I was lucky enough. I think I told this story before. When I first got to LA, a friend of mine was giving tours of the Hollywood Entertainment Museum, which was on Hollywood Boulevard, like next to the Mann's Chinese Theater.
Yeah.
And or next to I think it was next to the Dolby. And they had a ton of movie memorabilia in there. And actually, they had recreated the set with the actual set pieces from the Enterprise, from the Star Trek, the Next Generation.
Oh, right.
Wow.
So I got to sit in Captain Picard's chair and Geordi LaForge's engineering comm. They had Cheers, the bar from Cheers set up. So I sat in Norm's seat. And then they had the X-Files. They had Mulder's office from the X-Files set up, so I got to sit in his chair too. It was wild.
Nice.
That was really cool. so I know they were like, they were taking overflow from some sets, but yeah, I don't know what especially like the ones that are offshore. I don't know if they would ship them or do something, set up a museum somewhere. I don't know. I know like
Yeah.
Harry Potter, I guess, started doing tours, right? So I guess what is it, Leavesden or Pinewood? Has
Leavesden. Yeah.
setup? Leavesden. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
They have
really
it.
cool.
It's amazing
Yeah,
to
that
think that some of that just goes in the bin.
I know.
Yeah.
It's used and it's just thrown away, and
Yeah.
it's collectibles at the end of the day. You know, if you were on the set, you were like, can I take that?
Yeah, I think, oh God, there's so much of it. It's the easiest and probably most cost-effective thing to do is just throw it away, because if
Yeah.
you really wanted to sell it all, I think they have to hire people to sort all that out, and it's like, okay, well, this is just too much now.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, when they're done with films, things that have been made for the films that belong to production, they auction them off for other units. I don't know how to explain this properly because I might be wrong about a couple of things, but I know that like sometimes, like if the special effects team makes something for a film, it doesn't belong to them. Not all the time. Sometimes yes, sometimes not. But then it can then be picked up by like another special effects team who pay a certain amount of money to bring that on. So sometimes they do like trade-offs like that. But for the things like scene sets and stuff, well, no one else is going to use this set, and we need to get it out of the studio because like
Yeah.
the space is used up. So goodbye. Whoosh.
Whoosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause I know most films here are set up as limited liability companies. So the whole film itself is a company while it's being produced, and then they usually just dissolve the company afterward.
Yeah.
So I would imagine, like, unless they have a contract that says the studio owns the assets that are created, all assets. Yeah, I don't know how that works. That's a really interesting. I wonder.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you're right. Because those pieces are gorgeous, right? And it's it's kind of sad to see that just discarded after a film. Like you'd think there'd be like oligarchs in the world who would pay, just outrageous sums to set that up in their 18th garage somewhere. Like,
Yep.
you know,
I
here's where I parked my Bugatti in the Nostromo. Like,
That'd be amazing.
I know.
Yeah, I've seen some like just amazing outdoor scenes as well, and sets that are just huge, like way bigger than you expect. And I think some of them are like intended to be reused in a certain way. Because I think by Leavesden there's an area that I can only vaguely remember, but it kind of looks like an outdoor pier almost. Like it's like this kind of massive C-shaped thing. And I just remember like walking over it thinking, what the hell is all this for out here? Like this massive, like it could have been like the dock to a town or something. And like, what the hell? We're supposed to be like in the middle of a film. But and then yeah, for King Arthur as well, they had like this whole outdoor bit which was supposed to be a courtyard and like part of the castle. And you're like, that's high. Like you don't realize like how much of the sets they build sometimes. And I'm like, well, people actually have to go up and do that. And how do they make all that of fiberglass? Where are they making it? Like, and how do they transport it? And how do they piece it together? And then it's just like
Yeah.
gone. Like as soon as the production's done, it's gone. And you're like, no
Yeah.
one will ever find out about that. Like maybe there are some pictures, but like it just looks like it's a very historic thing. Like, wow, that must have taken time, and then it's just gone. Like
It's not.
it's like I don't know if people get the credit for it sometimes. If you told them to like put up a replica of like Tower Bridge in London, they could probably just do it whoosh, and then it's gone. And you're like,
Yeah.
okay, all right, that was cool. Did anyone
suppose-
take a picture?
Especially with the prevalence of CGI these days, it's so difficult because the bar is so high as well to know what's real and what's actually part of the set.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I've seen some sets and it's just totally green. They're just walking over the fake scenery, and obviously they do all the movie magic afterwards to blend it all together into one nice final scene. But
Yeah.
other times the set is real. And it's just like, wow. I mean, just to have like a part of like where they sit around at the in the Nostromo when they're having lunch
Yeah.
and stuff
Yeah.
like that. You'd have thought someone in the world, as you were saying, Kev, has that as their dining room. That would be
Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, not a normal person, but some freak like us lot. we would totally have it.
Exactly,
If we
with
had
the
the
fake blood
space.
splatter on the walls. Yeah, exactly. Like it would
Exactly.
be,
Yeah.
you know, you'd think so. But you're right, though. I mean, the bar has been set so high now that set extensions, for its all intents and purposes, for most productions, look seamless. Like you can't tell where the physical ends and the digital begins because it's gotten so good, and skill sets have gotten so good. You know, you can watch older movies and the ones that were shot before they knew that things would go 4K or high def or whatever, and you could see the seams and you could see the lines and things. But nowadays, I mean, they're made for that medium, so it's seamless. And those
Yeah.
artists are beaten down until it's seamless.
Unfortunately, so yeah, you sometimes see like mask lines or matte lines in some older films where they're
Yep.
trying to
Star Wars
superimpose
even.
stuff.
Yep, Star Wars. Especially the older Star Wars, if you play them on like a higher res set, you could see the matte lines. You see it all. And nowadays, that stuff's gone. That's all crunched out. People will look at it. You know, they'll up the gamma tremendously just to make sure those lines are gone. And those artists, you'll be beaten down until those are gone.
Oh man, talking about upping the gamma, it reminds me of those kind of moon landing conspiracy theorists that like up the exposure on pictures. They're like, oh look, you can tell where this has been like put in afterwards, and it's just like JPEG compression artifacts.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, about sets, I was going to say on the Pan film that I kind of mentioned recently, in Cardington, where they built like an entire jungle scene, and they literally like the whole floor had like a couple of feet of just dirt and mud, and it like almost took up the entire hangar, so it was massive. And then they brought in all different variety of plants, like kind of jungle type plants. I mean, there must have been like a massive company helping them out with this, but there was so much of it. And then they built these massive trees, which I think were also fiberglass, so they had trees like thick mud and plants buried into them, and when they cut paths through it, so it was like you could have your own little walking path going through the jungle. And when you were in there, it was like actually being in one. But that wasn't it, because it was supposed to be an area where like Peter Pan, the guy who is with played by Garrett Hedlund, who played Boy Flynn in Tron Legacy, and other people were kind of meeting up with the natives, and they had built these huts that were kind of multi-leveled, almost a bit terraced in a way, and they were actually suspended like up there in the air, and then on separate levels they had trampolines which actually worked, like kind of laid down. It was like, if you've got to undo all of this to get it out of the hangar, but if you just hired this out as an Airbnb, you could probably make a lot of money from it over time.
Man,
because it was all structurally sound. You could walk up there, walk around all of like these building areas, and then when you look down, it's just a jungle, and you're like, I'm in an aircraft hangar. What the hell's going on?
Yeah. But it's just all encompassing, because if the director wants to swing the camera one way or another or something, you want it to be all in frame, or you have to do set extensions.
One thing I remember about that was that it smelled good in there, because it was like this really kind of fresh dirt with all the plants as well, and mixed in with all that wood. I was like, nice, I like it.
Like, I'm actually in Neverland.
Yeah.
Where's Pixie Hollow?
That's one of the few times I actually got starstruck, because when I was there, Garrett was there, and I was a really big fan of Tron Legacy at the time, and he looked around and he crossed eyes with me, and I was like, oh, just like I actually felt a bit, oh, okay, because
that's awesome.
Like I hadn't had that with other people, but I was like, oh, I really like him. He's a good actor. Yeah.
Like I met Billy Joel on the street in New York, and that was the first time I was ever starstruck. I was like, I'm like, Billy Joel's like 2 feet in front of me. Like, I was like, Billy Joel, and he's like on his cell phone, and he looks up at me, and he goes, huh? I was like, forever I got a for Billy Joel. So
oh my god.
Cool.
I saw on Reddit earlier, someone tried to take a sneaky picture of Kelsey Grammer.
Oh wow.
And it wasn't sneaky in the end, because like the picture was just him looking through people, like smiling at the camera, because like he caught them. I love it.
Funny. I was like, I think like a couple years ago, I was at like a Sky Zone up in the valley, and I saw a guy who was like totally familiar. So I was like, I just nodded like I knew him, and I said hi. It was Kevin Nealon, and I was like, hey, and he's like, hey, and then it struck me. I'm like, I don't know him. I just know him because he's been on Saturday Night Live and like a million movies and Weeds and all these other shows I've seen. Like, I don't basically know the guy.
Well, I don't know. There's always going to be the practical side of things because there's only so much you can do digitally without taking like the full step. Because I think if you end up doing all of the environments on a green screen and post, then eventually you're going to think, okay, what's the point of having actors anyway? Because that tech will, will catch up one day. So we'll just make an animated film instead. So it's like, well, I think there's always going to be some physicality if you're doing that.
I think so. I definitely think so. I mean, when looking at the stuff, especially the metahuman stuff in I mean, your video totally got me looking at like all this UE stuff, UE5, and it's phenomenal.
It's a rabbit hole, a very
Yeah.
deep one.
Yeah, I mean, anybody listening to this, watch Curtis's video on UE5. It's really good. But the thing that got me was the metahuman stuff that I was looking at. It's really close, but again, it's an uncanny valley. There's no bottom to that valley, right? Because like it doesn't. The closer you get, it's so true. The closer you get to reality, the more we see those little subtle things that we know in daily life from talking to other humans, and you know, some of us talking to ourselves in the mirror or whatever. Like you notice things that are not there, that are still missing in the digital, right? And it just like, even the little tiniest subtle thing will break that fourth wall, right? It will take you out of the story. It'll take you out of the narrative, and you're immediately going, that's not real. That's not a real person. And it's so like, it's getting there though.
Yeah.
It's getting closer. I think we may find the bottom of that valley at some point, but man,
the devil's in the details.
I thought the comment you shared earlier about the retopology was a very interesting one, and it's multifaceted. I mean, it really does depend on what your end goals are.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, great. We can now take high-res cameras and photo scan something and bring it straight into a game engine, baked, and it auto LODs and all the rest of it. And that sort of tech is absolutely fantastic. Until you start trying to make a stylized game, where suddenly that is completely useless, and you need to go back to the artist because you need a particular style to your asset. I mean, maybe one day there will be a button that's like emulate low poly, and it's just a shader that applies over the top of this nanite technology. So
yeah, I do want to try at some point seeing how nanite responds with procedural materials in Unreal Engine, because you have the kind of material nodes there, and I haven't tried anything other than just the basic image textures that come packaged with them. But if you're calculating things, especially maybe in response to other stuff like, you know, AO or whatever, I don't know what you can actually do with the material system yet, but I think that might be a bit weird, because it might have trouble with that. It's
quite versatile, the material system, and it's got things like the real-time tessellation and things that we were missing from Blender for years. The thing I'd be interested to see is how, because it has to be a nanite model, so it has to be doing some sort of pre-processing. And I'm not sure about what's going on in the background. Is it another form of baking? Is it just another optimization that's taking place that needs to take place?
Yeah, and would if you had like tessellation for certain materials, would it even allow that on the nanite meshes, because it's already doing a form of tessellation anyway, like depending on so
I don't know.
It's
wonderful. The tech's been around for years. I can't remember what NVIDIA called it, but they did an asteroid demo, I think in 2018, showing you know, billions and billions of polygons, and as you zoom into the asteroid, it just gets more and more and more detailed. So the technology has been around for ages, and it's great to see a game studio, or not a game studio, sorry, a game engine actually taking that technology and actually giving it to the hands of mere mortals who don't know how to program
exactly
how to get it to work in the first place. I think it's revolutionary. I don't think it's gonna knock a ton of style of games out at all. You're still gonna need the artists for a lot of stuff, and the same's true with MetaHuman or whatever it's called. The need for a realistic human's great, but there's loads of edge cases, well, there's loads of normal cases where you just need a Disney character. Whether or not, again, you apply like the Disney AI filter on those characters to see what they come out.
I think there's still going to definitely be a need for artists. I do agree that I think the retopo stuff, like, don't just focus your career on retopologizing. It's there are going to be algorithms that are going to be able to do that, really, really fast. But for artists, I mean, the scanning stuff is never going to take over artistic expression, because there's always going to be the stylized stuff. There's always going to be those people who
Yeah.
want to do the stylized films, and stylized stuff sells too. It's not, and not everybody wants to watch some. It's why Final Fantasy, as ambitious as that was back in 1999, like it fell apart. It
Yeah.
fell apart because it was just that uncanny valley came in, and some of the sets looked great, but it was still like, if you're gonna watch an animated film, like, watch art, not something trying to copy reality, right? I mean, it's like the same thing with like Polar Express, right? It was great. It was a great film, but it was kind of like weird, right? It's kind of like freaky
Yeah.
in a way. So I think there's always going to be a spot for the stylized stuff, or photo surrealism, I should say,
Yeah.
which you're making stuff look real, but it's it's like an alien planet, right? So you can't go out and scan stuff on Earth and call it alien, right? So you'd still have to create it. So you'd be paying attention to the reality of it. So you'd be looking, you'd probably be working with biologists, or with people who can look at plants and go, yeah, that's real or that's fake. But still, the artists are going to create it, right? So you're still going to create lush worlds. Like, could you imagine Avatar just using scanned assets? Would that have worked?
No.
I don't
No.
know.
Like, it
Probably
doesn't
not.
exist, right? So you can
Um,
take like that stuff as a baseline, but the artists are still gonna have to treat it, right? So you can go and scan a forest, you can scan a fern, but then the
Yeah.
artist is still gonna have to take that fern and make it glow and make it, do other stuff that wouldn't be intrinsic to Earth, right?
Yeah.
It
If
wouldn't be terrestrial.
photogrammetry was going to take over, is what Nanite is kind of suggesting, and what some people are leading to, then it would have already done that. Because the only
Yeah.
thing that's missing now is the fact that you still need to do cleanup on those models anyway, because often they're going to come out with floating geometry all over the place. But
yeah.
after you've done that, you then would go through an optimization stage where you'd make your level of details, which Unreal already did as well. It would automatically do a lot of that for you anyway. So it's not really changed, apart from the way it's doing that level of detailing has changed.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so anything that would have used photo scanning before, it's just optimized that particular workflow, that particular pipeline. It's not changed anything otherwise, I don't think. I mean, I've still got to play lots with it. I've been playing with Unreal for a few years, and this and the what's their particle system called? I forgot now. But that looks absolutely phenomenal as well.
Niagara.
Niagara. Is that it?
Niagara, yeah,
Hmm.
it looks absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Again, these are all deep rabbit holes that you can play with for days and days.
No.
And days.
So many videos to make now. I'm going to become an Unreal
I-
YouTuber.
I know. I was part of the reason I had rebranded my name. I'm like, there's so many other things that I use, or that I'm interested in, that I would love to go into. Unreal being kind of on the back burner of that, but I mean, it's definitely coming,
Hmm.
and it's phenomenal. I mean, I would love to use Unreal as a renderer. I'm like up against the wall rendering right now, and I'm like, if I don't need stuff that a ray tracer excels at, why don't I just use a really good rasterizer? I mean, Eevee's a really good rasterizer, but Unreal is just, man,
Yeah,
wow.
Unreal's definitely a little bit
Mm.
ahead of what Eevee can do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
I was
And I
surprised
do love Eevee.
at the demand, because I don't always check all my comments. Obviously, like when you look at the comment feed on the YouTube Studio, you see the new ones that come in, but you don't see like new comment replies.
Yeah.
So I went back and looked at the video words, and there was someone saying, "Hey, you should do videos for Unreal." And then I checked like the replies to them, and there's just lots of people going, "Yeah, please, yes." And I was like, "Oh, okay, there's
Yeah,
there's a
like
demand."
18 replies to one request. You're like, yep,
Yeah,
I
it's
should
like,
probably. I should
alright,
probably do
okay.
something
Well,
like that.
Yeah.
This is just anecdotal. I've got no evidence to back it up, but in general, there's loads of absolutely tons of blueprint stuff on Unreal out there, and there's obviously some C++ stuff out there, a lot of that, but very few people have touched the art side of it.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Here we go.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Off we go. So there's that, and there's also like more complex topics, things that are alien to the general developer, like maybe networking, are also really scantily covered. I think it's very much like the Blender space as a whole. There's loads of beginner and basic stuff, and the moment you start talking, oh, could you do something on simulations? You're like, I've only got another, I don't know, 70 years left in me. That's only like 2 simulations in Blender. No.
Yeah, 70 years left exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
yes. Oh man, I have been running sims. I've had a sim running a whole day in Houdini a few days ago. Almost, I literally, I think it was like it took like 9 or 10 hours, and
Oh my God.
that's on a Threadripper system because I was really pushing it. And I was actually kind of proud of myself for the result that I got. But it was oh man, like Sims are fun to do, but then you always get the comments like, "I just can't do that on my computer. Thumbs down. This sucks." I'm like, "Oh well."
Yeah,
okay.
it's expensive to do. It reminds me very much going back in time to when Cycles was new, and it didn't matter what hardware you had. It was going to take a few minutes. You cross your fingers. You're like, "Does this look right?" Render. Go off and do something. Come back. No. Crap. And then you tweak some settings and try again. Or even worse, you're like zoomed in using a render border on part of your model. You're like, I'm gonna get this little bit looking perfect. And then you go, awesome, that looks amazing. I'll render the entire scene. Blah, that's horrible.
And the worst is how it handles subsurface scattering. If you try to use subsurface scattering even right now, in Cycles 10, and I was trying to use Cycles 10 in production, and I decided not to. I don't think it's ready. I tried a bunch of different settings, and I can't get the noise out of subsurface scattering without tremendous amount of samples, and like upwards of 5 or 10 minutes a frame, and I got 800 frames to render. I can't do it at HD. So I'm like, what can I do? So I fell back and I used branch chain, and I'm working, and I got about 2 minutes a frame now, and low noise or almost no noise, no flicker. So I'm like, all right, the sampling's working. It's picking up, and it's enough sampling that I'm not getting, a shift between every single frame. So it's good. But yeah, like back when Cycles came out, forget it. You couldn't render. It was so prohibitive because the speed of the computers just weren't there yet.
And now with optics, I mean, if you've got a reasonably modern computer, 20 series NVIDIA graphics and above, you can get a very good impression, even in a dark scene, of what the end materials and everything are going to look like. It still obviously lacks the detail. If you need detail, you're going to have to render out a few more samples to get there. But yeah, phenomenal what we can do these days versus just 5-6 years ago.
Yeah,
come such a long way.
It's such a difference. I've been so spoiled because most of my career I've had a render farm. I've had access to upwards of at least 10 machines, and now I have, I don't know, I think I have access to like 3,000 if I want them, 3,000 processors if I want them. But that's at work. At home, if I'm freelancing, I have my one machine, and I can't get I don't want to pay scalper prices for an NVIDIA card right now, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, what can I do? I can
What
offload.
listed at?
But if you're working under NDA, you can't just send it to a render farm because you're sending out the data, right? So you have to keep it local. It's like, what do you do? Bought a Threadripper. Pray for the best, right?
I was going to say about that privacy notice with NDAs and stuff. I think I remember at one point Gleb rendered like a scene. This might have been like a few years back even, but I think he might have responded to someone, or no, maybe I think someone pinged him on Twitter or something. I'm trying to remember, saying that, oh, were you rendering on Sheepit? Because there were a few frames that popped up on my computer, like that looked like they came from that animation. I was thinking, oh, that's a bit weird, isn't it? If you're trying to render something out and then those frames are popping up on someone else's computer who's actually doing the rendering, and you're like, uh-oh.
Yeah, you cannot use crowdsource rendering
Mm-mm.
if you're doing any client work, unless the client doesn't care. So if you say, hey, can I use this? Oh, sure, our stuff is out there. Okay, fine. But then 99% of client work, oh, that would be bad.
Yeah.
You're looking at a lawsuit right there. I'm kind of bummed out about this. Like Nvidia just released that 3080 Ti
Yeah.
3 days ago or so, and it went to Best Buy here in the United States, and now it's gone. You can't get it. It's like, why did you even do this? Like, why did you even tease people like that?
So there's a company called Scan in the UK. That's where Nvidia dropped their cards, and they were. I was there. I was on the list.
Oh, yeah.
And they were gone within 3 minutes.
And their pricing too. It's like they're scalping their own product. I'm like,
Oh
Like,
no, that's the thing with Scan. That's why it's so popular. They are whatever you call it, RRP, MSRP, something like a 3070, which is a fantastic card, will go for I think it's £469 in the UK is what it is if you manage to get one of those ones that are dropped from Nvidia.
Yeah.
But the aftermarket price on most sites is about 1,000 plus.
oh, easy.
Yeah.
So you're
Yeah.
talking about a 2 times markup on it, and obviously I get why people are salty about it, but at the same time, it's hello capitalism. It's the world we live in.
It's a crazy situation right now. So
Yeah.
I'm very happy that I'm able to get comparable render times on the Threadripper that I was
Oh
able
yeah,
to
and you
get
don't have
at
any
normal
RAM
price.
concerns either, which is
I
brilliant.
don't. And the good thing is that I have 8 gigabytes on my 1070 GTX 1070 right now, which is an older card. But I have 8 gigabytes on there, and the current scene that I'm rendering right now ran out. I ran out of RAM. So if even if I had the 3070 that only has 8 gigabytes, I'd still be hosed.
With Cycles X, it's CPU rendering something you could do again.
Yeah,
Mm.
Cycles X isn't bad, although it's not with. I will say with subsurface scattering, without the ability to do branch. Now I can't remember the term. Branch path tracing.
Yeah.
It doesn't look as good. Branch path tracing still looks as good, and I haven't found the setting for branch path tracing or whether or not they did away with it in Cycles 10. I don't know. I haven't found it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't have time to look. So if anyone's listening to this and can comment in the comments and say, hey, here's where it is, I'll be very happy.
Now I might be wrong. I mean, it's a shame it's not at feature parity, but it's new, so and it's great that it's happening. And I might be wrong about this, but it would be brilliant. Unreal's actually taking this approach with their stuff. They're going more modular, and I wish, even though it was a sort of a beta add-on, as it were, or even an alpha add-on, I wish it was available for everybody without downloading a special branch of Blender to get Cycles X, because then obviously there'll be a load of more complaints about people who don't understand it's an alpha, but it would also open up the user base to far more people, which may actually get them feedback faster. But I think that would be a better way to deploy things in Blender, as specifically as add-ons, where you can make Blender far more modular.
I don't know if it's easier on the dev space because of the way they have the code. You know, they'll do a build for you, you know, and they put the build up, or else you have to download, you know, whatever the subversion or whatever, and you have to build it yourself.
Yeah,
which isn't very.
I mean,
hard.
that comes from a place of being ignorant about the code base there and saying, "Oh, why don't you just make it an add-on?" Might not be an option, but I'm thinking that Cycles itself is an add-on, so maybe Cycles X could also be an add-on as well, perhaps.
That would be cool.
I'm sure they could find a way if they wanted to. Yeah.
They're limited on resources though. So they have their marching orders, and that's where they run.
Yeah,
and that's cool.
Totally.
You know, they're doing amazing work. I hand it to the dev team. They really are, and all the other devs out there that are doing non canonical versions of Blender. That's phenomenal. I'm not getting as good results with subsurface scattering, and I really need it. And I could do it as a post processor. I could do it as an added layer, and I can add subsurface scattering in comp. I mean, I know how to do that, but I don't want to have to do that.
You could potentially render it all out using vanilla Cycles, but with mats covering up the areas, and so you're speedy one way and speedy another.
It is, and I have certain things separated out just to hedge against changes. But I'm at a point now where I'm just like, I don't want to do that. I just want it to be fast, and so I could see the results and get it back out. 2.73 is awesome. It still has that, and it's actually running really fast. It's actually faster right now for my scene than all the tests I did in Cycles X. But I don't know enough about Cycles X yet, and it's only one build, so I'm not sure.
Always the way, isn't it? It's the thing that
Mm.
you're doing that it doesn't support. You're like, why?
Always.
Why not?
It's the story of my life. It really is. Everything is trial by fire, and nothing works for the specific thing I need. So I always have to do a tweak and a workaround.
So 2 years ago, I was doing this little bowling scene, and for a bit of fun at the end for the students, I
bowling.
was like, "Oh, we're going to apply physics, and it will just go smash." You know, you don't have to animate it. And it was the time when I think it was Blender 2.81. I think it was around that time.
Right.
And it was the physics engine just wasn't behaving at all. You'd put the pin on the ground, and no matter what you did, it went. After about you got the ball run up to it, so maybe a 5-second animation. It would before the ball would reach, it would just go. Now I've had enough.
Yep. And it
Suddenly, the whole
launches.
scene just exploded to chaos. I'm like, but why?
Rocket pins. I know.
This
It's
didn't
like
happen in the previous version.
it'll jitter and then
So-
take off. Exactly. Even Bullet now. Bullet is an amazing solver. It's an amazing. It's still amazing, but it's older code and it still runs slower than you'd think. Even in Houdini, but it's phenomenal. And Houdini probably has the best implementation I've seen of any kind of physics solvers. But yeah, you still, if you're not careful, you can still get the jitters. But there's tons of like workarounds, so you can like have like you can have it activate at collision. You could have there's
Yeah.
like so many different workarounds that you can do to solve those issues now. But back then there wasn't a whole lot.
This is one of the great things that I think has come from game engines across to things like Houdini and Blender is the fact that you don't need to do things until they actually happen.
Yeah.
So in a game engine, you don't initiate physics on an object unless it's actually been touched by something, because otherwise physics is being calculated all the time on an object. and
Exactly.
You don't get your frames per second. And over the years, I've seen hundreds of amazing physics simulations done in Blender. I'm just like, you guys have the patience of I've seen someone do a car wreck with soft bodies in Blender. I'm like, I've tried that for weeks and weeks on end to try and put all the panels together, a very basic car, and I'm going to smash it up. And the car just kind of goes along and it goes whoop, 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 whoop. Just
And
ends
then
up like a
it's just-
giant wobble board. I'm like, there's something I'm missing here.
It's funny how the physics engines and game engines are like just basically superior at this point.
Yes.
I wonder if it has something to do with the availability of data though, because I guess it's only calculating like maybe every frame or something when you're doing it in Blender, like when it's kind of baking out the cache.
Yeah.
In game engines, it's just like it's consistent because they do it on 60 frames a second ticks, I think. Yeah.
So that'd be having like 2 sub steps in Blender for each calculation.
Yeah.
So you would set like sub steps to 2, and you would have half steps between each frame. So but if you're calculating at 60, so they're running full 60, so that would make sense.
Yeah,
The physics engine's usually locked separate from the animation and everything else.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you end up with very weird things happening.
So
Yeah.
when you're doing the programming in any game engine, you can usually attach code to like a continual ping, which is just like as fast as it can possibly go, and then you've got like a frame locked ping, so whenever it finishes rendering a frame, it will call that, and then you've got like a physics one, which is usually the same as a frame lock one, unless it's kind of locked to 60. So yeah, it's always been separate in that way. But kind of like what Michael was saying, in a lot, I remember in Unity especially, if you have like a ton of physics objects kind of interacting with each other, so you had like a bunch of like wooden planks or something that were just falling, it'd be like very low performance. But then once it reached a certain point where there was a threshold where it didn't think it was going to move, and maybe it was just jittering a bit, they would all just stop, and then it would just stop calculating them, and then like the frame rate would go way back up again, because it's like, oh, we don't need to do anything anymore. They're not going to move any further than that, so it's clean. They're just static.
Yeah, it would stop the even though you've added friction to something, it would stop things sliding, or
Yeah.
there needs to be a minimum force threshold and a minimum stop threshold.
Yeah.
And outside of that, you don't calculate physics on it anymore. Obviously, in a game engine, I think they use like a volumetric type system, a bit like the VBH we have when we're rendering stuff. When they're volume bounding things, and then you go, well, this thing here and this thing here can't possibly interact with one another, so we calculate the physics separate from them unless they come within a certain threshold of one another where they could possibly interact with one another, and then you can calculate the physics independently and then be multi-threaded about it.
Yeah, I don't think you're far off though, because I think that if especially video games that's their business, right?
Yeah.
Like that's not Blender's main business to do. They'll add it as a feature so that you can do physics simulations. But game engines, like that's their business. Playability and having the realistic interactions is part of selling a video game to audiences, right? So that's like their business is let's make this as efficient and optimized as we can so that it looks really cool and it sells, and B, it like doesn't crash the systems that we're running on.
Yeah.
And we playability, right? So I think that is their business versus like Blender or other DCCs. It's not their primary business.
There's a surprising amount of physics genius that goes into like making like character controllers for video games that are both kinematic and non-kinematic in nature, in the way that, because a lot of controllers are physics based, but obviously that's not perfect all the time. If you want to do I don't know, like weird things like going up steps, like which might break physics in a weird way, you need to, or even if you're on a platform and you kind of lock to the platform and it moves, you want to stay with the platform, but you don't want your character to like slide off or get some weird friction or whatever. So you need to be able to transition from like a kinematic to like a non-kinematic, like as soon as you step off or something like that. So sometimes it takes a lot of like understanding of how to transfer forces from something that's just virtual to something that's an actual velocity, keeping in mind the direction that it goes as well. You need to be able to calculate the direction that you're moving and then transfer that to a force without it suddenly like jolting or doing something weird. So there's a lot of thought that goes into it, like more than you'd think would happen for any of these other softwares. But I think like because all those use cases have been done like hundreds of times over, the people that make these physics engines for game engines have like a really damn good understanding of how they should work. So
yes.
How long ago was it? It was about 2 years ago, making a sort of cops and robbers game in the Godot game engine.
Right.
And it was a multiplayer game. And we ran into a bug where I was driving around, Jan was hosting the game, and physics worked his side.
Right.
But if we put a big sphere in the game and played, low poly Rocket League. But when I hit the ball, nothing happened. Because we weren't transferring force data, we were transferring positional data. So I'm in the same place as the ball, but as far as the game's concerned, it's solid for me.
Yeah.
Because
so technically, because they were hosting, were they transferring the position of where the ball should be as well to you? Okay.
Yeah.
So it wasn't physics based on yours, or maybe it was, but
well, in the end, we ended up transferring forces across, and the physics simulation has to run on the host's machine.
Yeah.
You can't have two competing physics engines.
Yeah.
And then you run into, well, what happens with rubber banding and things like that, because that changes. So you have to, we didn't quite go that far with it, but one of the things you have to consider then is what happens when you're out of sync. You've got some sort of smoothing to happen, otherwise you end up with issues. And one of the issues we had with the next game we went with, which was like kind of a wipeout type game, because we had ships going at 400 kilometers per hour, when we tried to network them, they were just like this all the time because it was going so fast. It was faster than the physics tick. So the server would be like, no, you're actually here. No, you're actually here. No, you're actually there. So you'd be all over.
Yeah, physics is horrible for networking.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Luckily luckily DCCs don't have to deal with that stuff. So that's something gaming
No.
does, but Blender wouldn't have to deal with that. But it's still, I think that the teams are much smaller for like the people doing the physics stuff for Blender as would be like at Activision or something.
Yeah.
They have like
Yeah.
entire departments dedicated to making that stuff happen and be awesome.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
The thing that messes up my mind, and I've tried to understand it because I've got a book about it, and I haven't managed to wrap my head around it yet. But when it comes to doing like procedural planets or like Earth scale planets, so for things like flight simulators and space
Yeah.
games now, like Elite Dangerous and all that, when you're rendering, obviously you're just rendering somewhere within the world origin of like 000, because if you go too far out, then you've got floating point precision errors and whatever.
Yeah.
So when you're representing massive objects, it's all an illusion, it's all fake. You have like a virtual representation of like your coordinates and your position in the larger space of things, but that needs to translate down to a smaller kind of coordinate for what you're representing in the actual world space, should we say, in quotes, for like where your scene
Yeah.
is. So it's always fake. But when you're like doing multiplayer on like these massive things, you're like, how the hell does that work? Because now you're coming from like a fake coordinate position, which is basically being represented in the world space. They're in a different coordinates that's being represented in their world space, but you need to decide when they both come close enough in that coordinate, then you need to decide where they need to be within each other in that local space, and then
Yeah.
like choose what to sync up and what to not. So it's like you're thinking from two different things at once, and it's like I don't understand how people manage to figure all that out, but it's really complicated. But damn, man.
There's some of these things end up being trade secrets that you basically never find out.
Yeah.
A bit like driving simulators are incredibly hard to get right,
Yeah.
and especially AI and how the AI actually would go around a track,
Hmm.
and that we've done tons of research on it. We seem to keep making driving games. I don't know why. Neither of us particularly play driving games that much, but anyway, tangent aside, the trying to work out how an AI would follow around the track, and if it's going to be aggressive to you because you nudged it off the last time, how do you adapt the AI? Because you can make them follow just a track, the best racing line. That's easy. But what happens when they go off? Do they try and get back to there? But then it's going to be a very boring game if every car's following the same track round. So, and as far as we can tell, sort of like that must be a closely guarded secret of all the Blue-made driving games. You're like, this took us years to do.
Yeah. I'm sure
Yeah.
a lot of it is,
Amazing.
and going back to the point before the driving games, I think like probably like Blizzard has worked that out really well with their World of Warcraft stuff. I mean, they have these
Mm.
massive,
Different scales.
massive multiplayer games with just incredible scale, and how they figured that out. There are a lot of like trade secrets, I'm sure, stuff
Yeah.
that'll never make it out to the public.
Unless someone treads in someone's footsteps again. But if you do that, you end up in violation of a patent at some point. So you can't develop it at that point anyway, which is a real shame. Speaking about physics, often space games do reveal this more than any other type of game, I suppose. Kerbal Space Program was a great physics simulation, but at 70,000 kilometers above the planet, there was an obvious physics jump. When I played it first on a sort of a low end PC, it would freeze for a couple of seconds as it's transitioned from one world space to another.
Yeah.
As you say, with floating point errors.
Yeah, you can notice when the indie games reset origins, like where they move the object back to 000 from the particle effects. And I think a couple might have had this little bug to start with. Don't know if it does now, but if you've got like a particle effect that's throwing a few out, like every second or something, and then suddenly you just see them go woof, like off into the distance, and you're like, wait, what happened there? Where are the particles over there? It's because your actual character or whatever is just being reset to world point 0, even though the rest of the world looks fine. It's because it's just trying to stop you from going out the floating point boundary. And it's like, oh, okay. So every now and again, there's these little telltale signs. So, yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
If it doesn't
If
get
it-
in the way of gameplay, though, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Human Fall Flat is a great when you were talking about the character and platforms and things. It's a great
Yeah.
example of what happens if you just let physics take control. You're all over the place. We call it Drunken Toddler Simulator.
Oh, it's perfect. Yeah, I've played that
I
game
like
a
that
little
one.
bit. It's fun.
It's great fun. If you play it with a couple of people, and one likes just grabbing hold of the other one, lifting them up and dropping them off of. I'm helping.
Also, do you remember what was it called? Surgery Simulator. What was it?
Oh blimey, the VR game.
It was a VR game at one point, I think, but it was a normal game beforehand. But it's like, we need to
And you had to get a scalpel.
Yeah, and use and try and move things out the way. It just shows how clunky things are if you don't have good controls. But I love it. People bringing hearts out and just accidentally throwing them away. Like, oh no, damn it, come back.
No, I need.
Yeah,
Well, you don't.
A VR version of that game, Operation.
yeah,
Yeah,
Can't touch
basically.
where the guy's
Yeah.
nose lights up.
Oh my god, love it.
Operation.
Fantastic.
Anyway, we've been going for over an hour now, so I think
Nice.
it should be time to wrap it up.
Yeah, I think we've hit some good topics. It seems it'll
Yeah.
be interesting for people, especially the Unreal stuff and the game stuff and the physics stuff.
Yeah, and I do want to do more videos for that, but I've got a couple of things I need to make first because I was doing the procedural moss with Charon. I know that's nearly ready to be put on the store. So
Nice.
and then I'll need to do a video for that, and then I think I'll go back to Unreal. But I know people are waiting for Unreal videos now because I got a comment on the new one today about Blender 2.93 saying, "Oh, are you interested in doing more Unreal videos?" I'm like, "Yeah, just wait until I've done this and that." And I'm thinking, God, I hope I don't lose those subs before I get back to doing another one. But yeah, oh well, we'll see. It'll be fine.
Yeah, it'll be good. It's all
Yeah.
gonna be good. I have a feeling we're gonna see a dearth of these come out now.
Mm.
Everybody's super excited about it, so I don't know. It is what it is. But there's like a million videos and there's a billion viewers on YouTube, so it's not like anybody's gonna step over each other. So whatever.
Yeah, that's true.